What did you see past life years?
Okay, so we'll just, I don't know what's happening tonight.
Okay.
Okay, so welcome to tonight's meeting. This is ELPCO's August 2023 meeting. We're so happy to have everyone here. Thanks for coming. We have a very cool agenda tonight, but since we have the Salt Lake City Fire Department in the room right now, we want to give them our full attention because we never know when they're going to have to leave. Thanks for coming. So the owl right here is what takes your picture, and if you just talk, it just goes right into the, and then everybody out can see it.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for having us out to your meeting tonight. We're here from Station 5, 1023 East. Captain Rock, and we brought just August newsletter from the department to share with you 2 points. Being that it's August, it's back to school. Notice on this morning on the way, you see crossing guards out and lots of kids on the sidewalks. So we just want to talk about safety there. First and foremost, leaving home. I know it's difficult, but you have to put the cell phone away. Even if you bring it with you, not to touch it, it's a major distraction, cause a lot of accidents. And when you're leaving home, before you leave home, it's always good to do a walk around with people, make sure there's no kids behind the car, bikes, anything like that. And then we're backing out. It's always such a dangerous time. We don't have that great vision, just to be sure that the sidewalk's clear and getting out to the street. Some other things, obviously, to watch your speed through school zones, follow traffic laws, and be ready to stop at all times. You know, kids can be unpredictable. They're running late to school and they forget how many times the parents have told them to check the traffic and they just cut off the road because they're running late. You know, also when they're riding their bikes, try and give them 3 feet of distance between the bike and the vehicle. When they're crossing the crosswalk, and not just kids, but everyone in general, when pedestrians in the crosswalk, try and have eye contact. You know, you see them and they see you, you're both in the same. If possible, try to drop your kids off on the same side of the street as the school is, or if possible, you know, society will do this. Anytime you're approaching a crosswalk, be mindful if you see other cars stop, even if you don't see a pedestrian in that crosswalk, just know they might be stopping for something. Yeah, this is especially important to know as well, as we see a lot of traffic pushed out to the neighborhoods with those who are not at home. There's a lot more traffic in residential areas, and that's had an impact on us as well. We have to use some of those streets to navigate through them. The other thing I want to share with you is if you have any kids who are high school age or 16 years old, the Salt Lake City Fire Department has worked with the Salt Lake City School District and Innovations High School to offer a career and technical education course. It's taught by firefighters, and it's a 4-year program that teaches them basics of firefighting, also the certified EMT school. There's a lot of options there for them to learn in this field. They can get them like an early start. If you have interest in that, you go to our website at slcfire.com. There's a tab called Youth Programs, and it can tell you more information about that, how to get also next month for the youth as well, we have what we call our Camp Athena, Weakness. And it's a day-long course for kids 16 to 20, who are student firefighting. They get to come out to our training tower. They get outfitted with fire gear. They get to do actual live fire events, work with our firefighters, city members, fire department administration come out. It's a good day. Get a real feel for what we do. And once they get the gear, they put on the mask, it's to be a really gives you an idea of like, this is something you could be interested in, or do too much. It's a great class we offer, and the dates on those are Camp Prometheus for the boys, that's September 9th. And Pasadena for girls is September 16th. And again, information on how to register for those camps is located on our website. We continue to be pretty busy at Station 5. We've got 2 apparatus there. And for the year so far, we're going to average 14 calls a day. Busiest station in the city right now. At our station currently, we have the only what we call as a chat response vehicle. And that stands for community health access team. What it is we have a social worker that's partnered up with a couple of our firefighters. We drive around and reports for taking not only medical calls in our district and throughout the city, but the social workers specifically, they respond out to multitude of calls, like overdoses or people experiencing homelessness, someone having suicidal ideations. It gives them more resources than what we have now. Most of the time we show up on these type of calls, we can send people to the hospital. But now that we have a social worker with us, they have a lot more resources and training and knowledge. What's out there for these individuals? Keep them better health. So that's a great thing. We're expanding that soon. We'll have one on the website as well. Because the one at our station is pretty busy. It's coming up soon.
You have a social worker for just your station?
So they're housed at our station on another vehicle, but like I said, right now they cover pretty much all of Salt Lake City and the rest of my clients. So once they get one on the east side, that was a station on the east south.
Is that staffed 24/7?
So right now it's staffed Monday to Friday. But again, they're looking to expand that. Or just have the fire stations.
Call 911. Seeing somebody. This is. Would they send that to you or would they just send the police?
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with the questions that they take when you call in. They'll ask if the individuals are heard to receive those type of things, and that can lead them down different questions that may send out just us for a medical response or PD based on if it's a those units that arrive first, if they assess the situation, find that they do need that help, they can call for this.
Because I was downtown a week ago. And there was a young man on State Street and Third. And he was definitely not functioning in his world. He was just really having a meltdown. And I got where I could stop the car and I called 911, but I wasn't sure if they sent a policeman and asked him to show your hands or whatever. He would not respond because he was not in his world.
Can I jump in here real quick? So before y'all came in, we were talking with these gentlemen here, I come from an EMS family and spend a lot of time, our family spends a lot of time working with people in crisis. So you bring up a really good question. We see this a lot in different parts of the city, not so much in these different parts here. So a lot of us wear multiple hats in that we work in EMS or healthcare and see this quite often. So some people do kind of recognize it and walk away. A lot of people, it's the first time they bump into it, and it's something that they don't really know what's happening. So the way the process works, and some Hollis can jump in here if you would, Detective Hollis, is that when you call 911, everything gets routed through the same system, and then the information comes in. But as a bystander, it becomes a question of HIPAA and privacy. So we'll never really know what happens on the other side of the contact. But if you guys can answer my question real quick, and we'll have Detective, we have our guy on the line here to answer a question. people are really having a hard time getting word out about the chat team and the excellent work you guys are doing. People are still thinking that, you know, people show up with guns every single time. Is there a way that the Solid Fire would like us to message this, or how can we help to get that chat message out?
Well, something I'd like to point out as well, and Detective Powers may have more information on this, but PD has had social workers available on their side for a while since before we. And so even if they are sending police out, it doesn't mean you won't get a social worker through them as well. I don't know their process for getting the social worker for those calls.
Would you like to speak to that, Detective Follows, real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. Our social workers are much like the fire departments. They're available. I think right now they're 12 to 18 hours a day, and I think they're 7 days a week right now. But for sure Monday through Friday or Monday through Saturday. But the goal is to have them 24/7. But right now that's the availability. So we as officers, if we respond on a call, which like 99% of the time we're responding with the fire department anyway, then we will just ask for our social workers to respond out, and they'll come out as well. And if they have, so during the daytime hours, our social workers also have full-time CIT or crisis intervention detectives that work with them, and they will also come out to the scene, and they have more specialized training than just the average patrol officer to deal with people who are in crisis and things like that. So ours is simply just getting on the radio and saying, hey, can we get a social worker out here? And they respond out immediately. So it's an immediate thing.
Great. Did that answer your question?
Well, it was not so much question, but I did go around the block. He had made his way through the intersection and down the street, and he was still having a terrible time. He was in so much pain. And the next day was the article about the young man whose mother called for help and he was shot by the police. So that just sort of distressed me to think that they might have responded in the same way.
Well, you know, as I think that you're not alone, right? And I think that most of us in the room would all agree that it's just a different situation. But I would like to say, from the perspective of somebody who does respond a lot to people in crisis, that that we've seen a difference with the chat team, and with the homelessness crisis that we see all around the town. I personally get this question answered a lot, that when it's an acute issue, the chat is very helpful. And then when it becomes more long-term, the heart team and some of the things that the city programming are setting up, different programs to intervene at different levels. I'm starting to see some success. This is just my personal point of view, not the ELPCO chair. So, if anybody else would like to weigh in on this, I think it's a great question. And I'll ask you guys once again, what do you think the best way for us to message this and get this information out better as a community council? Should we have people from the chat team come in, Detective Follows, or how do we let people know this is happening?
I think that's more a question for the fire department.
Yeah, they'd be more than happy to attend the meeting. We're doing everything in this department we can to get the word out about it, because it's a new program. There's not a lot of cities that have done this, and it's been successful. So I know the mayor's office is happy about it, and everybody feels like it's doing wonderful things. And so we're always trying to push out the information as much as we can. I think it's just a new program, and it will start to become more known to people. More known to people as the vehicles get out in the street, and you see more of them. But yeah, we'd be more happy to have one come to a meeting and talk about it, where the social worker from the chat team can provide a lot more information than what we could.
That'd be great. And then I think I'll reach out to the mayor's department and have somebody from their administration come and tell us all about it. I think that would be great.
Well, I would not approach somebody who's in that state, and I'm sure nobody else would either. It was frightening.
Okay, well, thank you so much, you guys. Do you have
Good to
anything
know
else that
somebody
you'd like
can
to add?
respond.
I don't, I guess.
All right, well, we're gonna
Thank
move
you.
on to the next thing.
Thank you.
No, thank you
Thank
for
you all.
coming. We always appreciate it. So we just have to, we have to remind you, everybody, that this is a small table. And it is really important that we be conscientious of waiting till people are done and then asking a question so that we can be conscientious to our guests. Did you have a question?
I did, I wasn't sure, is there a chat number or number for a chat, or is it just the 911 line?
It goes directly through 911.
Okay,
And then they ascertain the level of service that they need to provide, mostly by the information, as the fire people said, or as Detective Fellows said. So like, if there's weapons involved, just different things like this change the situation a lot. So yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. And thank you for asking those. Those are fantastic questions. So moving on to the next thing in line for our agenda. Let's see who we have here. Looks like Josh is here. Josh, are you, or Detective Follows?
Yeah.
You're up.
Wait, me or Josh, sorry.
Detective Follows, you.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, it's good to be here with everybody tonight. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Detective Sam Fallows. I am the community liaison for districts 5, 6, and 7. So I have about half the city. And I part of my job is to kind of come and report on the crime statistics for the neighborhood, but then also just take any kind of questions. Tonight, I'm going to highlight a couple of things and clarify some things that we can hopefully get a little more communication on, and then take any questions. So if you have any questions, think of those now. If you're online, just go ahead and throw it up in the chat and I'll get to when we're done. And then for those that are online, I'm going to be putting on some helpful links and information on the chat there, including my contact information. And then everything that I talk about tonight can be found on our website. So Salt Lake City is very unique that way, just FYI for everybody. I work for a couple different police departments, and I don't know of any other police department that puts all their crime stats on their website free and for everybody to see and check even for your specific neighborhood. So that's pretty awesome. So for the ELPCO area, and we report on all part 1 and part 2 crimes. Those are anything from like homicides and aggravated assaults to DUIs and frauds. So there's a whole array of different types of crime types. For the ELPCO area, we always report on the last month. So, because that's what we have the total data for. So for July is what I'm reporting on tonight. We had 23 part 1 and part 2 crimes reported. A lot of the crimes we see out here are kind of like the larceny and the thefts. There were 11 of those reported to us in the month of July. We had a couple of family offenses, 3 vandalisms, and a fraud are kind of the ones that stick out the most. So we tend to kind of see in the ELPCO neighborhood more of the thefts, sometimes assaults here and there. But it's just kind of a good reminder, like with the thefts, just try and lock up your vehicles at night, put away any kind of valuables you have outside, like, don't leave bikes in the front yard, things like that. Just kind of put them in your garage if you can, or put them in the backyard, or just do everything you can to make sure that you don't become a victim. Put your lights on at night is a really big one. And just kind of make sure everything's out of your vehicle that's of value at night. That'll help kind of cut down on some of that. And sometimes you do everything you can and you still get broken into. So sometimes it just happens, unfortunately. But we want to definitely try and take the measures we can to mitigate that. So moving on to some of the highlights, I want to talk about the SLC mobile app because there seems to be some confusion lately on what to report on there. So I just want to highlight if there's any type of crime whatsoever outside of camping, then do not report it. So do not report it on the app. So if it's like, if you suspect drug dealing is going on and you want to put in a tip, something like that, we have other avenues for that. So you can either contact me, or you can text or call our drug tip line, but the app is not for that. So the SLC mobile app is for the main one that people use it for is reporting concerns regarding homelessness, so camps, things like that. But you can also use it to report down stop signs or any kind of sign, speeders. If you want some speed enforcement in your neighborhood, you can use the app for that. Any kind of like, if there's a stop light that's out in your neighborhood or in the area where you live, if there's a shopping cart that's been abandoned, street lights that are out. So you can use the app for a whole array of things. Oh, and graffiti too. Graffiti is a big one too. And they get that cleaned up really quick on the app. So if you, so I guess that would be one other thing that you can report on the app, but I would still ask that you report that to the police department as well, so that we get that as a stat for the, so we know what's going on criminally as well. And that's the reason why. So anything that's reported on the SLC mobile app is not a crime stat for the police department. So they don't, unfortunately, the two programs don't talk to each other. So, so yeah, super important on that. Any questions on any of those things before I move on to the last part?
Just to clarify, very specifically, do not report crimes that you don't want counted in the stats on the app. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying don't report any crimes, period, whatsoever.
Okay.
There's no crime you can report on the app. What
Okay.
I guess what I am saying is, if you have a crime that happens, like, so graffiti is a crime, obviously. So if you do report that on the app, the idea is not to get it reported as a crime, but to get it cleaned up, right? So if graffiti is in your neighborhood, snap a quick picture, do a quick upload to the SLC mobile app, and then you can either I think you can do an online report with graffiti, but if you can't, you can just call an officer and you can do a report even over the phone and just send them the picture of the graffiti. But for it to count as a crime stat, I guess is what I'm saying. But anything that's a crime, don't try to report it on the app. Like if you had a theft, or if there's drug use going on, something like that, don't use the app for that kind of stuff. That's where we've gotten a little bit of confusion.
That's great. Yeah, so I think that's clear. So then what about online reporting for a crime where there's no suspect? That is still something that you're recommending?
Absolutely, yeah. And very good intro into what for that next part. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. If there is a crime that has occurred, like a simple theft or something like that, I would still love for you to report it. So that you can do online to slcpd.com. And you just click on the little blue tab that says do an online report. So it's kind of a lot of information, but yeah, the slcpd.com is for reporting a crime. The mobile app is for anything else, basically. So just to clarify that. And then I just wanted to clarify, lastly, just a couple of comments. I know that we'll talk a little bit about Liberty Park. Liberty Park's been obviously a hot button issue over the last month or so. And I was part of a meeting that had the mayor and Councilmember Mono and Michelle Hoon, who's with the Heart team. And I didn't have a lot of time to talk in that meeting, so I just wanted to clarify some things that I had talked about, just to make sure that we're clear with everybody on what I was trying to convey in like a 5-second answer. So, so one of the things I talked about was we may or may not make an arrest depending on how much property someone has with them. And so what I want to clarify on that is, if we go and make contact with someone who, let's say, is maybe camping in the park or, something like that, and we are going to arrest them, we weigh our options with a couple of different things. So if they do have a large amount of property, we'll weigh our options for, are we going to just issue them a citation, which also counts as an arrest, right? That's also a type of an arrest. And then have them clean up their camp and move on. Or are we going to make a physical arrest and take them to jail, not for camping per se, but like on a different type of crime, like an assault or something like that. Or are we going to issue like a verbal warning and, have them clean up and move on? So if they have a lot of property, we may try to weigh some of those things. Like, is it worth trying to take someone to jail for an infraction when we've got an aggravated domestic violence holding in the queue that needs someone to respond to it immediately. So that's what I was more talking about. Like if we have serious calls that are waiting and we don't necessarily have time to wait for, 45 minutes while someone cleans up a camp, we're going to have to go to those other calls. That's patrol, right? We have other units that have the ability to stand by and wait, that are specialty units like our bike unit and things like that. And those are the ones that we try to utilize more when it comes to like those types of issues. Something else we try to do is, because it is someone's personal property, obviously we can't just discard it or something like that. So we either have to book it, which we will do if we need to. I've done that many times. But if we can find someone who they trust, like a friend, who can take the property for them in lieu of us having to try and book it as safekeeping, then we'll also do that to help mitigate and cut down on the time. But I do want to make it clear that we do not make decisions based on how much people of arresting decisions based on how much property is there. Like, again, we take everything in the totality, we weigh it, and then we make a decision based on that. So, if it's an infraction, the person has property that's going to take me an hour to book, and I won't be able to respond to more important calls, then it might be worth just issuing them a citation or a verbal warning and moving on from that. Whereas if it's something more serious that's going to require an arrest and there's no one to take the property, then I'll take the time to book it, because that's something we just have to do, right? So, so just to clarify that. And then on Liberty Park, I believe we have 3 cameras up there right now, 3 police cameras that are up at Liberty Park, that I do think have cut down on a lot of the issues we were having. We've got our overtime has been up and running strong, with officers signing up for that pretty regularly. And that's the overtime at night that will clear out the camp after hours for trespassing in the park. And then obviously the city and myself and the department are working on a bunch of other things and other programs and other ideas. I work really closely with someone who just went to the Parks Department from the city Heart Team. And so he and I have been kind of like talking about ideas and stuff, and Liberty Park is one of his main areas. So we're constantly trying to brainstorm different ideas, think outside the box, things like that. But I do think that Liberty Park has gotten better. I think that Liberty Park, and again, it's not a good thing, but I think that Liberty Park has been like much, much worse than it has been now, or even in the recent past. So, and we're going for good, right? We're going for like a place that people can enjoy and feel safe, and that's what we want. But I do think the park has improved from what I've seen. And, you guys are there a lot more than I am. You guys visit the park more than I do. You live near the park. So if there's a constant reoccurring issue that we're not necessarily seeing or getting to, reach out to me and let me know so that we can, kind of work on it. The SLC mobile app is good to report that on too, but if you have a chance to reach out to me, I can kind of work things a little bit quicker on the back end and just kind of, get some resources a little bit quicker. So you're welcome to reach out to me as your liaison, and I can help with, some of those other issues. So that's pretty much what I have. If anybody has any questions, I'd love to answer them or try.
What's your liaison contact information?
It's in the chat, right? Yep.
Yeah, I put it in the chat, and then also it is in the newsletter, I believe.
Mhm.
Thank you.
It's on our agenda too.
Yeah.
That we send out. So. Anyone else have questions? Does anybody on Zoom have questions? Just go ahead and raise your hand. Okay. So I want to thank you, Detective Follows, for following up on that. After the Councilman Mano's press conference, or whatever it was very informative. But we did get several comments from the public concerned about what Officer Follows just covered. So we asked him to clarify that a little bit, and we will send this video out to some of those folks who sent us emails wanting clarification. So thanks for that. I guess one thing we didn't touch is that neighbors have been concerned with the after hours, moving folks from the park out into the streets and then having them set up in front of their houses or at churches and sort of partying all night long. And not knowing how to deal with that situation. So is that still a phone call to the police department?
Yeah, I would say after, like at night, after hours. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Especially if
Okay.
it's, so try and be specific about what the issue is. So if there's someone having like a party going on in the alleyway or something behind your house, then call into dispatch that that's what it is. You know, don't just say it's a camper or something like that. Say it's, you know, hey, there's a party going on in the alleyway behind. There's making a lot of noise. There's drinking. There's drug use. Whatever it might be.
Mhm.
You know, and we've talked about this in the past, but just try and be specific as you can with as specific as you can with dispatch when you're giving them details. You know, and then again, if something changes, then call back and let them know. Right. So
Right.
if someone's in your front yard and you go out and you tell them to move, and it's, you know, 1 o'clock in the morning or something like that, and they refuse, and you call into dispatch, and then now they're trying to break down your door or something crazy, like call 911, right? And let us know the change. Like, let us know that something is different now, right? And so that we can respond accordingly. So yeah, no, that after hours especially for sure would be just to call into dispatch. And officers can kind of respond out and check on it and, you know, remove people or whatever needs to happen. So it is kind of a double-edged sword to do the nighttime clearing of the park. I think after a few weeks or even maybe a month or two of consistent officers in the park at night, hopefully that will just become kind of a common thing that people are used to, that, hey, we need to get out of the park after 11. So, and maybe hopefully you'll see less issues of that, of people like going into other people's yards or alleyways or things like that at those hours. But for sure right now, while it's kind of a fresh thing and they're starting to push people out of the parks at 11, and it hasn't been happening too much in the past. It was happening before, and then, you know, they had to find the money again to restart up the overtime. So we're kind of in that phase again of like getting people used to like, hey, you got to get out of the park after 11. So hopefully that will subside and like just become the norm again.
Great, thanks. Hold on one second. The other issue is that we've had a lot of response about is that people setting up their camps on the 9-line trail, which has been newly designed and is supposed to be a bike path. So people are, you know, concerned of not being able to use the 9-line trail and having to then take their kids out into the street. So I think everybody here in the room and on Zoom understands that anybody is welcome to use our city parks during the day. But what is the situation of folks just basically blocking right of ways, and what's the legitimate way to handle that? Or what's a good way to handle that if you have to take your strollers and your bicycles out into the road?
Yeah, and with that, I mean, if they're blocking a right of way and there's no way to get around them safely, or you don't feel comfortable, you know, whatever it is, you feel kind of scared or uncomfortable doing that, and you want to call to have us come get them off there, we can. Because like you said, anybody's allowed to utilize a park during open hours, right? It's what you do in the park that may or may not be legal, right? So if you're like setting up a camp or using drugs or smoking or things like that, obviously that's not acceptable in a park. But if they're just hanging out, even if they have their, like, sometimes you'll see people with quite a bit of property. If they have the property with them, that doesn't necessarily constitute like a camp, quote unquote. And they are allowed to have property with them, right? So it is a bit of a conundrum for sure. But if they're blocking, like clearly blocking, and there's no other way to, like, there's no safe way to like just utilize the pathway, then, you know, you can call dispatch for that. That's fine.
Okay, great. There's a question in the room.
I just wonder, when you say dispatch, what does that mean?
It's the 911.
Okay,
That's a great question too.
So we should call, if we see somebody camped where they shouldn't camp, we call 911.
Well, you can always also call the non-emergency line, which is the 801-799-3000.
Well, I guess that was my question. Which of those do we call?
Well, if it's an emergency, you know, and there's really an emergency happening, that's a 911 call. If it's just a nuisance or a difficult situation that you want to report, the non-emergent line is I think, what everybody recommends.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, good question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Um,
There's somebody on Zoom. Can we
Yeah,
just
hold
get
on one sec. Hold on one sec, Alan. I just want to say something to that last one and I'll answer your question. For the 911 and the 799-3000, they go to the exact same dispatch center. They go to the exact same dispatchers. It's just obviously the 911 calls are prioritized. And so, yeah, like Christina said, if it's anything non-emergent, meaning like what you said, sir, if it's just a camp or something like that, just call the 799-3000 number. If it's someone like actively getting assaulted or something like that, right? Or you're actively getting assaulted or being chased down or, something like that, then, 911 would be obviously appropriate. So I kind of say if it's something in progress where your life is in danger or someone else's life is in danger, or maybe someone's like smashing a window on a car or something like that, it's okay to call 911 for any of those kind of in progress things where, there's more to it than just like someone hanging out there, right? And if it's something less, then probably call the 799-3000. So.
Okay, I have a Zoom question from Ellen. Can you go ahead, Ellen?
Thank you very much. At 84, I'm new to Salt Lake City, having participated in Phoenix's Graffiti Busters Police Department and Neighborhood Association. What do we do to cut down on the speed on 800 South and Liberty between Harvey Milk and 1300? It's not something worth calling, but I would like to participate with some effort to cut down on the speeding because there's walkers, bicyclists, children, adults, dogs, you name it. I want to help you. Thank you.
Great.
Yeah, so that's a great example of when you could put in a SLC mobile app request for speeders. And what that does is it goes directly to our motor division. They handle all the speed complaints and things like that. And they'll go out and they'll saturate the area and, write some tickets and stuff like that. And get some people to, slow down. So yeah, that's a really good resource, is the SLC mobile app. And just to clarify, that could be downloaded from either app store. And it's literally SLC mobile is what it's called.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
That's a great question, Ellen, because with the road construction and the intersection at 900 South and 900 East being closed, we have, of course, there's going to be a lot more problems on that street. So one, we're asking everyone to be patient because it's going to be opened really soon again, and the normal traffic patterns will kick back into effect. So there is going to be that relief. But the second thing is that Detective follows, if enough people keep using that mobile app, then that's how we start to see our help from our police department.
Thank you.
I just want to clarify one quick thing with the mobile app too that I forgot to earlier.
Mm-hmm.
When you submit a request on the mobile app, when that request has been submitted to the correct city division, so obviously like if you submit a speed request, it'll go to the motor division. If you submit a concern regarding homelessness, it goes to our heart team. If you submit a down stop sign, it goes to streets, right? When it goes to the correct city division, it will say closed. And some people, it's confusing because then you'll still see the issue. And so people think that the issue is resolved when it says closed, but really what that means when it says closed is that it's been forwarded to the correct city division and they now have it and will get to it and take care of it as soon as they can. So just to clarify that, there's definitely, myself included, because I also use the app, it's confusing sometimes because it'll say closed. So just wanted to clarify that for everybody so that it's a little bit clearer.
Thank you.
Great. All right, I don't see any more questions, so we're gonna say goodbye to you, Detective Follows. Thank you for joining our meeting.
All right, thank you.
Josh from the mayor's office is online with us on Zoom. So if Josh, you want to go ahead and log in or unmute and introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Hi, can y'all hear me all right? I hope. So hi, my name's Josh Raboyo. I'm on the community outreach team in the mayor's office. So I cover districts 1 and 5, and tonight I'm covering another community council meeting. I'm at Fair Park. I'm at the Northwest Community Center right now. So That's where I'm joining you from. I'll be there in person with you at Tracy Aviary next month for the meeting. So I just have just a few things to share. First of all, on the feedback community page, which is slc.gov/feedback, you can find the current opportunities for input on different city projects, surveys the city is currently running. These are to do with streets, public arts, parks, number of things. One of the efforts currently going on within our office right now is with our ADA coordinator. She's doing a full-scale evaluation of our city's parks for ADA compliance and identifying the barriers that people with disabilities may experience in our city's parks and formulating a plan to correct those. And so that's currently ongoing, developing that. So that is one of the things that you can look at on the feedback community page. Also, our compliance divisions continuing to hiring for crossing guards for our school year. They're about 20 crossing guards short, and I understand that that's better than past years, than last year, for example. But they still have that shortfall of crossing guards. So I would encourage anyone that's interested in that opening or know anyone that might be interested, just go to slc.gov and go to the Career Center, and you can find the opening for that. There's signing bonus, for UTA pass, other incentives for that to get more crossing guards. Also, let's see, I just wanted to share that in addition to the SLC mobile app, there's also an online way of doing that on a computer, not just on your phone. You can go to myslc.gov, and it's the same sort of format to report issues to the city, graffiti and speeding and the other things that we talked about that you can report through the app. You can also go to myslc.gov and report those as well. But I'll leave my contact info in the chat for anyone that wants to get in contact with me offline, or if there's any questions right here, I'm happy to take those. But that's all that I had for now.
Does anyone in the room have any questions for the mayor's office? Not even necessarily about this. Okay, it doesn't look like we have any questions. Thank you so much.
There was one thing I was, our city recorder's office is just sharing information with folks about the municipal election this year. The election is later than normal. It's on November 21st. So that's 2 weeks later than it would be normally. And this is also a ranked choice voting election. So if you have any questions on how that works, you go to the Salt Lake City Recorder's website and you can find information about the election timeline. There will be in-person early voting, in-person voting, in addition to the mail-in ballots that we all are familiar with. So just go to the SLC Recorder's website and you can find information about the municipal election. Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. So we had Olivia from Ranked Choice Voting come and speak to us and give us a bunch of details, which we're uploading all of our meeting videos this week. But I have a question about some of the debates around. Do you think that they'll give a little bit of information at the mayoral debates and some of the city, the district, local races, the community council debates about ranked choice voting?
Are you asking if the recorder's office will, or?
Yeah, so sometimes they give a little intro about it. Sometimes the League of Women's Voters give a little intro.
Oh, right.
You know,
I'm not aware of that right now, so I'd have to ask them, the recorder's office, if they have plans for that. I don't even know when the debates are. I haven't checked on that. So, but yeah, that's a good question. I can check in with them.
Okay, great, thank you. Sure, nobody has any more questions? Okay. All right, thank you, Josh. We really appreciate your
Thank you.
comment. Yep, have a good night. Welcome. Yeah. So we're moving on. Councilman Mano, our District 5 representative, is here. Welcome.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thanks.
Great. I am joining your meeting today from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm out here with a handful of council members, the mayor, and our redevelopment agency staff. We've come to Pittsburgh to meet with the counterpart of the RDA. They call them the URA here in Pittsburgh, and we're learning some of their best practices, projects that they've done, and some of the differences between their city and our city, and trying to share best practices with them and kind of learn some things that we can hopefully bring back to Salt Lake City and implement. So that's where we are at. But I have a few updates for you about things happening back at home. We have on August 15th, which is our last meeting we had, we approved our final couple steps in our fiscal year 24 budget process. One of the things we did was we approved the CIP projects. That's the capital improvement program. So during the annual budget that we adopted in June, we put a dollar amount into the capital improvement program, and then we wait until August, just because we want a little more time to go through all the projects. We allocate that amount that we put into the CIP account to specific projects. So District 5 got 3 projects this year. There's some projects that were kind of citywide, but District 5 got 3. One was Jefferson Park improvements, Main Street safer crossings, and another was 200 East ADA sidewalk improvements. None of those are in the ELPCO boundaries, but those are the 3 District 5 projects. Not every district always gets projects funded every year. But one thing that we did get, which I heard, I just logged on a little bit ago, but I heard a question about speeding. And one thing we did allocate money to that was a citywide project was the city's Livable Streets program. Livable Streets is a program for us to implement. We built a toolkit. There's actually an official city adopted plan to cut down on speeding and to make streets safer for pedestrians, bicyclists, people walking strollers, people in wheelchairs, and all of the above. So that we put the largest amount of money, I believe, that we've ever put into traffic calming this year. And a lot of that money is unallocated. And what I'm the most excited for is we've created programs that are kind of quick action, meant to be somewhat temporary, but things that can get on the ground very quickly. So if you drive around, you may see like rubber speed bumps on the ground, or you may see big concrete planters that are placed in the road. Those are things that are intended to be things that we can deploy in different areas, parts of the city, and figure out what works best. And then when we have more funding to redo the whole street, we'll have like some data and some understanding of what is best. But for now, we have all that money. So definitely put that information on the SLC mobile app, because that'll give us just data about where people are reporting speed. But if you have a specific project where you're like, hey, look, this one area, let's try a few things out, feel free to reach out to my office. I can connect you with Transportation Division, and we can get with them, and they're really good about meeting with constituents and just even coming to the street, looking at it and saying, why don't we try these things and see if it works? So we have some funding to do some things quickly. They're not the most beautiful things, but they're quick and they're functional. And they can help us inform once we have the money to do the more permanent traffic calming. So feel free to reach out to me or Jenna, my liaison, and we can get that set up. We also, with our city budget, we did a truth and taxation hearing, which is a state required thing anytime we do a number of things relating to property taxes. And this year, the one that we did was a judgment levy. We do a judgment levy every year, and that's basically a way that we can, when somebody protests their property tax bill, says, I think the tax assessor said my property was worth 500,000, but I really think it should only be taxed at 300,000 or 400,000. They pay a little bit less taxes that year. And then we issued the judgment levy to sort of true up the budget. So that's happened every year that I've been on the council. I think it happens pretty much every year. But that was a truth and taxation hearing that happened on the 15th. And we also heard our first city budget amendment for the year. And the one thing that we did is that in the budget amendment, we talked about additional funding for the Main Street Open Streets program. So that is the program that has happened the last few years, where Main Street between, I think like First South and Fourth South gets shut down on the weekend evenings, and the restaurants can sort of fill in the street area, have outdoor dining, and people can walk down the street. And the goal with that is to activate downtown, get people outside, make it a more walkable city. But it's also to, this is, a lot of us are looking at this as a potential test project for potentially actually closing the street down permanently, like something like the Denver 16th Street Mall. So we have a really nice, beautiful walking place all year long in that that downtown area of Main Street. And it could be something that has like movable bollards that like come out of the ground. But this is something that was easier to do during COVID because of some of the COVID restrictions that were in place that allowed them to do things a little bit differently. So this year it will be a little bit less, fewer days that they're looking at closing it down. But they are going to do some things that are permanent. There's some barriers that they need to put between the tracks line and where people will be walking. And they're looking at some funding to put permanent barriers in rather than just renting barricades that look like a construction zone. So it'll look a little bit nicer this year, and it'll be permanent infrastructure. And then the one thing we really talked about is they're proposing a great deal of additional funding for what they call activation. So programming through that Main Street. And I'm interested in hearing everyone's thoughts on that, because that is like hiring performers to come out during those days, which sounds great. I think if this is a pilot for something that we may do permanently, then if it's permanently that way, it would be the businesses that are activating the street, not performers that we're using taxpayer dollars to pay. So I'm not sure about that performance piece of that. We have a public hearing on Tuesday, September 8th for the public to come let us know what they think about that budget amendment. So that's one thing that I'll be looking for input on, is whether or not that Main Street Open Streets project requires us to hire performers for it to be successful, or is it really just the businesses utilizing the street, and is that enough? So that's one thing that we have coming up. And then we've done a couple other things with affordable housing. The other thing that people might be interested in on our Tuesday, September 5th meeting, this is in District 5 now. It's been redistricted in District 5, but it's over in the granary part of District 5, and that is the Fleet Block. City owns about an entire city block, and it has a long history going back way before I was a council member. More than 12 years, I think, of mayor's administrations trying to reuse the city-owned block. And the plans have changed quite a bit, but we are bringing that back up for the next steps. And the first is to do a rezone. And so on September 5th, there's also a public hearing about the proposal that's there. It's something that started. There's the murals, the murals to individuals who died by police that are on that block. And so for those individuals' family, it was in 2020, we were planning to do this. And then those murals sort of popped up, those kind of organically came. And then then we just sort of hit pause and did a lot of outreach to the families of the people depicted on the murals, and are now ready to move forward again with that project. So that'll be on the September 5th. That's all the updates that I wanted to share, but I'm happy to take some questions.
There's a question from the room.
I have a comment, for the Safer Streets program that you spoke about initially. I'll likely reach out to Jenna and your reason. I would really love to see a four-way crosswalk at 900 East and Belmont Avenue. I think it would be successful. I think northbound drivers on 900 East, by the time they get to the north end of between 1300 South and 900 South, they're really driving pretty quickly, and yeah, I sometimes have my nephews over. I really love to take them to Dolcetti and enjoy the town, and I always have a little anxiety about that intersection.
So that's 9th East and 13th South, just north of 13th
Oh.
South.
900
Belmont.
East and Belmont Avenue.
Mhm.
So
Oh.
the side street just south of 900 South, or however you know.
Oh, just south of 9th and 9th. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, I see. Yep. Okay. All right. Yeah, that's something we certainly could meet with transportation. There's the transportation division is full of traffic engineers. I call them traffic nerds. There's all these weird things that they figure out, but it's kind of fun to help to listen to them think about, okay, well, this has this turn lane and that thing. So it'll be interesting to hear what they say about that intersection, but it may be a great project for that livable streets quick action program that we can test some things out. So happy to request that meeting. What was your name?
Robert Goodman. I'm a homeowner on the east end of the block.
Okay.
Just 4 houses down from Belmont Avenue on 900 East.
Great. I'll let Jenna know to look out for your, and I think I have there's a staff member in here somewhere too. So we can make sure we take your name in.
And we'll follow up with you on that as well. ELPCO
Thanks,
will.
Christina.
You're very welcome. I have another quick question, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
How do you like Pittsburgh?
Pittsburgh's been great. Actually, I've never been. It's got some very different conditions to us. The city owns about something like, I don't know how many zeros, like 1,600 or 16,000. I think it's 16,000 vacant properties. So they were a city of 700,000. They're now a city of 300,000. So you can imagine how much vacant property there is in the city and how much unused space. That is not a condition we have in Salt Lake City. Obviously, we're a growing city and we don't have housing units sitting around unused. And if we do, it's not because nobody wants them. It's because there's a property owner that's just not taking care of them. So they have some very different situations than we do, but there are some things that we've learned and walked some little areas and got some ideas about how to. They have a lot of old industrial buildings to reuse. So I think some of those things may be really appropriate, like in the Granary District, for instance, over by the Fleet Block, that how do we use some of those old warehouses and things.
Thank you.
Well, we're very lucky to have Alan on our board, who is recently from Pittsburgh, who helps us.
Oh, great.
The Land Use Committee. He's a great
Have some
asset.
pierogies while you're at it.
Yeah,
I
so
will.
Okay, so one thing that we've been hearing from the community is that we did actually talk to John Larson in transportation, is that there's a little confusion between the streets department, the engineering department, or the transportation department, and now the living streets department. So we want to give a big plug to the Living Streets Department with helping us with our traffic calming and safer streets issues. But again, people are getting confused, Darren.
Livable Streets is not actually a department. It's more of a program that lives within the transportation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's actually transportation is a division.
Right.
So we have departments and then divisions.
Mm-hmm.
Streets. Oh, we just moved one of them too, so I might get this wrong, but streets and engineering are in public services. I'm probably going to get this wrong, but okay, the difference is streets maintains our streets. So they have street sweepers, they will go out and like restripe things or do do maintenance of our streets. Engineering builds things, transportation designs things. So for instance, the 900 South project that you're all super aware of happening, it was transportation division that designed what it was going to look like. They're the ones that came to our meetings and asked us what we wanted. Should the bike lane be on the north side or the south side of the street? You know, how many parking stalls should we put here? Things like that. They designed it. Then when they were done, and the city council found enough money to build it, then it's the engineering department that actually works with the contractors on the ground to build it. And the engineering department has some crews that are redoing streets. So when it's a complete redo of a street, that's engineering. When it's just maintenance of a street, that's street. And then when it's designing things, so the transportation division doesn't actually have any equipment out on the street. They're fixing things, but they plan and deploy programs. So
Great.
that's sort of the lay of the land there, but it's understandably confusing.
It's an excellent segue into our next topic. If nobody has any further questions for Councilman Mono. I just want to say that I'm very lucky to get to sit on the Vision Zero task force. So it's really great to work with the city's transportation department and UDOT all in the same room. We also have people from the school board, and now having livable streets online puts a whole different layer into who we can contact when we have issues in our school zones and any sort of traffic calming situations or trying to slow cars down. So I don't know exactly when they came online, but it is shifting the dialogue a little bit. And a lot of people are reaching out to us again, because they don't really realize that this new part of the city has come online. And, first of all, thanks for making sure that that's happened for us. But tonight we have brought some members of UDOT here to talk to us about things that we're doing or that we can get into our schools and our businesses to help people understand better techniques for safer driving. And this is an education presentation that we're having tonight. We did get a lot of feedback that education maybe doesn't, serve much purpose, and that it really is about changing streets and slowing people down, traffic calming. But we couldn't agree more that those are really important parts of the conversation. But we still maintain that teaching kids to drive better during when they're learning to drive is going to go a long ways to helping folks, not hit kids in school zones. Let's just put it out how it is. So because it's back to school, we really want to focus on school zones and the kind of education component. So Councilman Member Mono, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate that. He might have walked off already. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and introduce you. Zero Fatalities from UDOT. This is Maddie. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Maddie Okamara.
There's someone over there.
I may have missed our opportunity. I'm here on behalf of Joey McNamee this evening to speak about Emerson. So I just was looking at an agenda, wanted to let you know that we're in the room.
Okay.
We are happy to go behind you guys.
Okay,
Whatever works for you.
Yeah, so let's put you in on. I thought I got a text that I wasn't sure that anyone was going to be here. So let's go ahead and let them talk, and then we'll come to you if that's okay. All right.
Thank
well,
you.
welcome.
Sorry
Thank
for the
you.
interruption.
So I'm gonna just, okay. So I can't share my screen because the host has disabled that.
I can share your screen for you. Just give me one moment and I'm happy to do it.
Perfect. So like I said, my name is Maddie and I am a presenter with Zero Fatalities in Safe Routes Utah. Both of them are UDOT programs, so they're just like a little branch of UDOT. We go into high schools, middle schools, and elementary schools, and we have things for drivers, driver's ed. We do assemblies in elementary schools, and then we focus on health classes as well. So I'll go over some of these tonight in this little. Perfect. Hopefully it works.
This takes me a second.
No, it's okay. Just real quick, I'm sure. Are most of you familiar with Zero Fatalities a little bit or heard of them or okay? So we are, like I said, it is a branch of UDOT. You've probably seen Zero Fatality stuff without even realizing you've seen us around. We have a lot of billboards. We have a Back to Basics campaign going on right now, which is teaching about getting back to the basics of what we learned in driver's ed. So maybe if you're lucky and your phones are listening, maybe you'll start getting targeted ads to your Facebooks
or YouTube, but we have commercials, we're kind of everywhere, again, billboards, and then we're in schools as well.
Do you have access to it now?
Yes.
Yay. We have a new computer, so we're glad that it's operating properly.
And then do I just hit share sound on the singing? Or should I, okay, perfect, but keep mine muted.
We can see you. Yay.
So a couple of our programs, we have a zero fatalities parent night presentation. A little over a year ago, it became a requirement for parents to attend an hour of driver's ed with their student. And so we go into those high schools, we talk to parents of teens who are currently taking driver's ed and getting their license, and the teens are there with them. It is all about behavior change. We talk about statistics. We just educate on the dangers of distracted driving, all those types of things. We focus on 5 behaviors of safety. So we talk about driving focused, driving calm, driving sober, driving alert, and driving buckled. So we have local stories, and then we have nationwide stories that we share at these, they're not really assemblies, they are like presentations because they happen at nighttime. But we go in and we share some tips of what parents and teens can do to be better drivers behind the wheel of the car. So instead of using your phone, messing with your GPS, set things ahead of time, have someone as your designated DJ or your designated texter. If you are in a situation where you have been drinking, make sure that you have someone that you can call, that you do not get behind the wheel of a car. So we go through all of those tips and educate about those. Then inside the classroom, we have a program that we call Truck Smart. So this is inside driver's ed, and we bring in semi trucks for these high school students to actually get in. And then the presenters will park their cars in blind spots. And then we'll talk about where semi trucks can and cannot see you, how to safely pass them. In the state of Utah, we have more semi trucks than any other state in the nation because we only have 2 major interstates, I-15 and I-80. So we just tend to see a lot more of that truck traffic. So we focus on 4 rules, one of them being can't see me, I can't see you. So again, we really try and educate these teens who are just getting their license on looking for that driver's face, making sure they're making eye contact as they're passing them. And then also making sure that they're not cutting them off. Cutting trucks off is a really big deal. And not a lot of people know that the best way to know if you're not cutting a truck off is if you see both of their headlights in your rear view mirror. That means you've given them enough space. So we talk about their braking systems, everything like that. These 2 rules you may have seen on the billboards on I-15. If not, maybe you'll notice them now. But we do have a campaign going on where we're sharing some more of that outside and not just inside the classroom. We also have a middle school presentation that was being piloted last year, and this year it is hopefully going to be in full swing. And this is really just to help those in middle school, mostly specifically health classes, 7th and 8th graders mostly, be better pedestrians, get excited to drive. We are seeing a lot less, well, just a lot less excitement, I guess, with teens trying to get their license. A lot of them are waiting until they're 18 or 20s. And so we want to kind of like help them ease some of the anxiety and prepare them and their parents or guardians. So we talk about what age you can get your learner's permit, how long you have to have your permit, why you need to have it for a specific amount of time. But we also talk about the myth of multitasking, because a lot of people think multitasking makes me a lot better. It makes me more efficient because I'm doing 2 things at once. But actually we call it switch tasking because your brain is switching back and forth between those 2 tasks. And so it actually takes more time. So we have fun activities that we do with students to get them engaged and to show them that switch tasking really is a thing. And then we also talk about the importance of wearing a seatbelt. That is an age where they're following a lot of their parents' examples. We talk about that in the parent night too with teens of like how parents can be a better example to their teens. But talking about why seatbelts sit in a very specific place, because they sit on the strongest points of our body, our hips and our shoulders, and when we move them and we put them behind our back or under our arms, it's just going to change everything if you are in a crash. And so we want to make sure that teens know why there is such a big push for seatbelts. So again, we share some local stories, we share other stories and videos to make it fun and entertaining. And then this one is our Safe Routes Assembly. So this one focuses more on the little kids and grades K through 6 or K through 5. We have 2 assemblies. We break them down K through 3 and then 4 through 6. The K through 3 assembly, they're set up kind of like almost a video game type assembly. So K through 3 is going to be talking to those littles about looking and listening for cars. Cars make noise, but sometimes we aren't always aware of them. We have to be looking. They're not always going to be looking for us. And then for the 4 through 6, we just talk to them more on their level because they should know that cars make noise and that they should stop like crosswalks. But we focus with them on being a good example and taking their earbuds out, putting their phones away when they're walking home from school. So essentially it's a pedestrian assembly. I do have a quick little promo video. We'll see if the sound works. Maybe not. Do you want me to try my video here? Stop sharing for a sec. Yeah. Yeah, I can.
Want to help your students make their way to school safely? Want them to learn how from expert presenters? And most important of all, want it to actually be, fun? Awesome! We've got you covered. The Beat the Street Assembly is a free 30-minute program that teaches kids how to walk and bike to school safely, sponsored by Safe Routes Utah. This in-person instructive assembly is available statewide in Utah, with a program for grades K through 3 and another for grades 4 through 6. We'll teach your students about the importance of traffic signs, signal lights, crossing the road, and helmet use through a dynamic educational presentation that's, like we said, fun. We'll even bring giveaways for the kids, like reflective bracelets, activity books, pencils, and more. We'd love to come to your school. Email us at contact@saferoutesutah.com and let's get your kids to school safely.
Okay, so yeah, we go to schools and we give out workbooks, color changing pencils to every student, and then we also hand out reflective gear. If any of you want to take any of these bracelets, you totally can. But we talk about the importance of reflective gear, stuff like that. And then along with that, we have what we call our walk and roll challenge. And so every student who walks or rides their bike, scooter, or skateboard to school can enter into win a challenge. And we give out free bikes and scooters and helmets. We pick about 15 winners every month. So again, I have some of these, and then just making sure we are okay on time. I'll do one more thing real quick. We do have a middle school lesson plan for these health classes as well. So teachers can request free swag, and it goes over pedestrian myths is what we call it. And so there are 5 pedestrian myths. One of them is if a car can see me, it can stop in time. So we have videos on stopping distance and how cars cannot actually stop on a dime and how far your car will take to stop, going different speeds. stuff like that. So they have lesson plans that they can print out, worksheets, there are posters that they can hand in their classes. And again, all these resources are free. We go statewide with these programs. So if you know of any school that you would like to see this in, or you have kids or grandkids or friends or someone, we would love to be in those schools. So, yes, thank you.
We have a student in the room. Do you have this in your school?
I don't think we're,
Yeah. All right, well, we're
Audience member here.
great. Okay, well, that was a great presentation. Now, again, I just want to stress that we're gonna talk a lot about street safety and our streets and transportation. ELPCO, we talk a lot about this in our board meetings or in land use meetings. So tonight's presentation is just to try and get this information out as broadly as possible. Maddie, do you do these only in schools, or can people request these for like church groups and other things like this?
Yes. They can request that. We do a lot of business presentations. We do a lot of, yeah, we call them business presentations, but if you have a group that you want us to come to, we can totally do that. We can do it for Truck Smart. We can do it for the zero fatalities, like parent meeting. We'll gear, obviously, like we'll take out all of like the teen specific stuff, for the adults. For the elementary school ones, we don't normally do those, but there are 10-minute YouTube videos online that essentially go through a very condensed version of that. So yeah, and I will put in the chat the links to these 3 resources, and it's free to sign up. You can go online if you want to request something, or you can email us personally.
Great.
Yeah, any other questions?
Okay, thanks for joining us. We're gonna move on then, if there's no more questions. We are lucky to have a representative of the Emerson School Community Council tonight. We actually had the chair invited Joey. She was on our agenda, but apparently we have a stand-in individual who I don't know. We'll go ahead and let you introduce yourself, but I wanna just, do a little introduction first. The reason why we invited Emerson Elementary to our meeting tonight is probably because, as everybody has heard, that the school district is looking at closing down some elementary schools in order to shift boundaries around and basically be able to streamline the younger education and cut costs, frankly, because the Salt Lake School District is losing students. We, of course, realize that every single person across Salt Lake is not interested in having their neighborhood school closed down. But if we must, close some schools, some will be closed down. Our local elementary, Emerson, has been keeping us informed on what the issue is, because they are one of the schools slated for continued study and potential closure. However, there has been some issues at with the data and the rubric that they believe the school district has been looking at in order to identify the schools for closure. And as far as what we understand, there's a limited time for the different schools to actually speak publicly to the Salt Lake City School District Board. So we invited them here tonight to explain what they would like to be heard on, give them the floor for the rest of our time. And we're going to go long, so go ahead and take some time. I'll let you introduce yourself and just tell us what you'd like your neighbors here in East Liberty Park to know about what you guys are experiencing.
Sure. So my name is Kirsten Swinyard, and I am filling in for Joy McNamee. She had a last minute family emergency, otherwise she would be here to speak to you tonight. And I brought my Emerson elementary student with me as well to get a taste of the community activist life. So as your chair mentioned, we do have some serious concerns about the data that the school district used. And a little bit about their process. They spent the first half of 2023 compiling various metrics and ranking all 27 schools on the basis of those metrics. They did that at a staff level. And then in mid-July, they made a recommendation to the school board, the elected level, the legislative body for the district, that basically drew a line and said 7 elementary schools scored lower than the rest of the district, and there was a really clear line between those. So we requested the information from them saying, okay, well, you know, we disagree, but we'd really like to look at the numbers that you compiled and we'd like to understand how you got there. So when they provided that information, what they provided was a list of categories that make a lot of sense. So there were categories based on safety, based on proximity to very large streets. For instance, Hawthorne got deemed for being right on 7th East. That all makes sense to us, right? So they looked at safety, then they looked at fair, you know, what did they call it? They didn't call it equity. We think they should have considered equity, but they did not. But they took a look at kind of a reasonableness factor. And so that involved, you know, what are the feeder patterns? So which elementary schools feed up to which junior highs, feed up to which high schools to make sure that there's kind of a distribution. And then they had kind of a community input column that was vacant because they had not had any community input up to that time. Then they had facilities or, you know, cost effectiveness, right? So that included scores for energy efficiency, availability of rooftop solar, you know, basically the cost per pupil or per occupant of the school in energy efficiency for looking at that. So those were these very reasonable categories that laid out. And then the scores that the staff had compiled did not in any way relate to the factors that they had laid out. So instead they had compiled kind of this, there were 4 staff scores for each school. So you would see numbers going from basically 7 up to 15. You'd see 4 of those numbers compiled. And then what they did is they added those 4 numbers and decided that was the school score, and then they ranked the scores and they took the bottom 7 scores. So we have been asking and saying, well, you know, we'd like to understand, obviously our interest is in understanding the Emerson data, very granular level. But we also feel like the rest of the district needs to understand, and the city really needs to understand how you reach these scores. That's where we've hit a little bit of a wall with the district personnel. So our concerns remain the same. Our concerns remain that you have 3 schools sort of west of the railroad tracks, west of I-15 that were tagged for closure. And then you have 4 schools in the Central City neighborhood. So we've got a corridor that runs from Wasatch Elementary at about 10th East and South Temple, includes Benyon Elementary, which is about 8th East and 4th South, 5th South. And it includes Emerson at 10th East and 13th South. It includes Hawthorne at 7th East and 17th South. That is the Central City core, just gone. So we feel like any possible realignment proposal with the elementary schools who were not on that list, any realignments are going to gut the heart of our city. And they're going to gut the area of this community council, right? East Liberty, gutted. We also feel like there are some substantial concerns with how you might begin to think about realigning those boundaries. For instance, 7th East is a really bright line in our community. That's a highway through our city. So right now you have some Hawthorne students who are zoned for Hawthorne who are east of 7th East, who are crossing 7th East. You don't have any Emerson students west of 7th East and crossing that. What happens if you close both schools? Where do you draw the line? Where are those kids crossing? The same question, if you're to think of the elementary school closest to us up the hill, that's Uinta. It makes a lot less sense to us at that point that you would then truck everybody up the hill through snow and sleet and rain and hail. You know, how do we think about the correct arrangement of those elementary school boundaries? We don't have any elucidation from the school district, either the board or the staff at this point on those questions. So I think, you know, the Emerson community is a very committed community. It's a very vocal community. We're full of a lot of public servants who are used to attending public meetings and speaking up and putting our hands in the air and asking for attention. And so this is a community that has engaged immediately, consistently, and very vocally with this closure process in a way that we would invite you to join us on. So there's a series of school board meetings through the rest of the fall. They're trying to work toward a final decision in December. That may push to early January. It's tough time of year. We understand that. We understand that folks are busy, but we also are all really committed to the vibrancy that an amazing community school brings to our neighborhood. And I'm happy to take any questions.
I'm gonna let the rooms ask questions first and then we'll go online.
I had a question. I mean, all I've seen on this is the reporting and the tribute.
Sure.
And the most striking thing, obviously, is the number of students at each school. And Emerson seemed to have sort of the right number of students. It was the only one of the 7 that did, as far as I could tell. The others had some real utilization issues. I mean, to me, that jumped out as being a question as to why the school was on the list at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so very happy to report. So the most recent student census we have is from October 2022. They do the head count October 1st, 2020, every school year. At that most recent census, Emerson had 468 students. That was the 4th highest out of 27 schools in the district. So what we think is happening here is that instead of looking at total enrollment, which we're very proud of that number. We're very proud of the special education hub that comes to Emerson. We're very welcoming of those families. We have folded them in. They're part of our community. We're also very proud of our dual language immersion ELP program. That's a Spanish language immersion program that draws people from all over the county. We have a very high percentage of our student population that has picked Emerson out of all the elementary schools that they could pick. They have picked Emerson as a school that they want to attend. So our enrollment numbers are very strong. What we think the district is looking at is neighborhood catchment enrollment. So what would your enrollment be if the district stripped out or moved those special programs? Again, not the true picture, right? I mean, they got to slice it somehow, but when you look at total enrollment and you think about the support community-wide, broader, outside our boundaries, we have a very strong showing on those numbers. And we really wish they were taking that into account.
Have they articulated any reason as to why they're not providing enough information to evaluate the individual assessments?
No, we've just heard silence.
Can I speak to that? So we actually I attended a meeting this last week with the Salt Lake Community Network, which is a community of Salt Lake chairs. Alicia was with me. Thank you, Alicia, for coming. So we were able to listen to the Salt Lake City School District representative answer some questions. And I'll let Alicia speak more to this, but the question when asked, same question that you asked, Alan, was essentially, we're doing our best. Okay, so one thing that ELPCO has prided ourselves on since basically I took over as chair in October is that we want to be data driven. So, of course, we have been listening to the pleas of Emerson, and we have representatives in the room that attend Hawthorne as well. So we've been continuing to follow this project. We've tried to get some of our other community councils along this gentrification corridor that was referred to just lovely as the heart of the city. But I'm going to actually turn this over to Alicia and ask her if she had any comments from that meeting that we just attended.
So one of the things that they did at that meeting was they showed us that spreadsheet of data. I had the same question about the scoring that were done by 4 different groups made up of different stakeholders in those groups. But a question was posed, how did those groups come to those numbers? What were the weighting? How did that happen? That wasn't clear. And they did not highlight that. I think the corridor issue, I did not hear that come up, but it is a really powerful point and a strong argument for this concern. There did not seem to be, to your point, a lot of clarity on what redrawn boundaries would look like and how that would be functional for our community. And it did elicit quite a lot of concern. Because my big takeaway was I was very nervous. I don't have children, but I was nervous. And that the 7 schools was the most they've ever considered closing in one go, because the argument was it's been a long time, they need to realign. 3 was the most recent number they had closed. 7 is a lot more than that, and they're not saying they're closing all of them. They didn't think they would, but maybe, and they're not sure yet. That was, so it made, I felt that same level of concern.
Okay, so we have a question in the room, and then we have some, we have compiled a list of stakeholder questions. So are we, Joey promised us that you'd be up for this. So, go ahead.
I've lived in my house for 40 years now.
Mhm.
And when I moved into the neighborhood, everybody was older than me. And then since then, all of those houses except mine have been occupied by young families. And I don't know if they're looking at the demographics that are going to be coming along. On my block, there's a dozen little boys, 5, 6 years old, that just run through the neighborhood. And they all go to Emerson, except a couple of them go to the open classroom. But basically, they're all Emerson people and very active. And I don't think, I mean, if you're looking at my neighborhood and thinking everybody's 80 years old, it's wrong.
Well, that's a good point. So do you think that the school district is addressing kids that are coming on the scene, that they just haven't entered kindergarten in our public schools yet?
So what I can say is what they've told us, which is that they have enrollment projections. They're very heavily focused on the recent past and the enrollment trends that show a decrease in the number of students in the district. They're also concerned, Councilman Mano was on the call earlier, they're concerned about housing policies that are emphasizing short-term apartments, tight housing situations that aren't going to contribute to kind of a permanent presence of families with young children who might use the elementary schools. So they're looking at all of that, but I don't know, because they have not shared, at least with us at our level, they have not shared the projected student population over the next 5 to 10 years. I would certainly hope that's part of their facilities planning, but I don't have a lot of visibility into what that is. They've been very guarded with that information.
I think a lot of people have moved onto my block because they want to live in the city. And they can have a nice big house. Actually, they can't have a big house. They don't look big, but
Yeah, okay.
have
Well,
a
so
nice big yard.
great, yeah, so thanks for that. Okay, and thanks for that question. I'm gonna actually bring up a couple of things and then we'll get to your question. So we have, today we had a vibrant conversation on our ELPCO Facebook about the fact that 7th East is indeed a highway. It is maintained and controlled by UDOT, not Salt Lake City, right? So that was, that was highlighted so wonderfully in this this sort of conversation we had. But we talked all about safe access today. We talked all about traffic calming, right? So did any of that enter into the conversations on whether or not a big street run by the state of Utah or a big street run by potentially more folks who are more looking out for its local residents at Salt Lake City is an issue?
Yeah, so it's certainly an issue that the Emerson parent community has raised repeatedly and vocally to say Emerson is tucked in, it's off McClellan Street and Harrison and 10th East. We don't directly front any of these major roads. We have safe access. We also have a lot of neighborhood students who walk or bike or, kind of make their wheels, on their way to school. 7th East is a big concern. It is a UDOT road. UDOT is difficult to work with. Apologies to the present company, Yep, that's great.
Well, any
don't worry.
state, it's just a big organization. It's no diss on you, Dot. It's just a big organization. So go on.
Yeah, it's difficult to do things like upgrade crossings or add safety measures. They're very concerned about flow of traffic, volume of traffic on a UDOT road. Almost the opposite approach for what you would want for someone this age, who 10-year-old walking to school, to and from school by herself, right? We want that to be safe and calm and sedate and very, very gentle approach.
So when we look at that spreadsheet that the board produced, that doesn't actually have information on it, you see that each elementary school has the major roads adjacent to the elementary school listed, but then there's no information about how they scored it. What did they look at? Like, did we get dinged for 13 South? Did another elementary school get dinged for 4th South or South Temple? You know, we don't know how they took those scores into effect or how much they affected us, how they weighted it. You know, we don't have that information. That's part of the data transparency that we've been concerned about.
So you're saying it has the illusion of objectivity without enough
Correct.
information.
I would say that's
Really.
exactly the issue.
So just to be very clear for the folks that, are gonna watch this later, there is something about data bias that, when we're talking about data driven, if the rubric is not clear how things are being scored, then essentially that column is a subjective column that can't actually be considered data forward or evidence driven. So, thanks for clearing that up. Alan, we have Jeff, a board member in our room who represents our East Emerson neighborhood, but also has children who cross the 7th East Divide. Jeff, I have a question for you. Do they have any plans for if they decide to close either Emerson or Hawthorne on how they plan on getting kids safely? Since more kids obviously will be having to cross that divide because there's a lot of flow between those two schools. Have you seen the plans regarding that safe school access?
The short answer is no, not at all. In fact, there's a lot of questions about safe routing of kids, and I'm in a unique situation too. I've had one child at Hawthorne. I live in the Emerson boundaries. I now have one child at Hawthorne and one child at Emerson starting this year. So I'm on the double chopping block.
Excellent.
I'm
Yeah.
very sorry. It's not a fun place.
But yeah, they're had all the same concerns about 7th East, but multiply this, if both schools were closed, Hawthorne pulls kids from the south to the south of this corridor that we're talking about, and Emerson largely pulls school kids from the north of where they're located. And even though they very closely coexist, and where Hawthorne's boundaries would go the closest, the next closest school to the south of them is Nibley Park. And think about all they're literally crossing a freeway or going across 21st South or I-80.
Yeah.
And Fairmount Park, which, has its issues lately with kids walking to school in the early morning. So thoughts about where kids and how they will transport to school and arrive safely and get home safely. I don't think that was considered at all in the rubric based on the data that has been presented. Let alone Emerson and Hawthorne and all of them, have a lot of shared concerns with where their community ends up and how their kids are going to be affected. So.
Great, thanks for sharing. Okay, so we have one more question from the folks who live up by me. I happen to live directly behind East High School. And I before I became chair, I represented the west of East neighborhood. We also have a advocacy organization for the students who are coming from Glendale neighborhood to East High School that fall through the cracks, called the West of the East Youth Advocacy Organization. It's a student-driven youth advocacy organization for kids who do not go to school in their own neighborhood to be able to advocate for their own educations. Okay, so you have a bunch of residents there, you have a bunch of kids who are worried about their access issue to their education. And as we know, because the boundaries run from the east to the west, or, we pull kids across the tracks, across State Street, across, 7th East, all the way up here, that there is, some disadvantage to that. So we work closely with a whole bunch of parents from the west side, advocacy groups, many parents. I didn't get their permission to name them on, to out them tonight. So I should have, but I didn't do that. They're advocating for a west side school. So that the kids who live on the west side can actually have their teenagers, their high school students, attend high school in their area. Now, this has been more than 30 years now that school district has decided to, move kids from the west side to east side schools. And some can argue that West High is not on the west side, because it is on the east side of the freeway. Okay, so has this issue been looked at in the context, the greater context of the junior high schools and the high schools, where kids will actually be going to school? Will they be going to school in their neighborhoods over the next 30 years, since this was a decision made more than 30 years ago? Are you aware of any of this?
So I'm aware that as part of the changes that the school staff recommended in July, one of the things on their presentation was a formal recommendation from staff to study the formation of a Glendale High School. I did not see a junior high on that same study list. I did, I don't know where the plans are for that.
There are junior highs on the west side. It's I think
it was primarily the high school, yeah. So they have set aside money to explore that option for a fourth high school in the school district, but I don't know much else beyond that.
Okay, so do you feel like anybody's looking at your elementary, this elementary school issue in the context of this larger picture of needing a high school where actually the kids live? Does anybody mention that to you, or?
We have been admittedly focused at the elementary level. What I can say is that the issue of a West Side High School plays into long-standing discrepancies in equity between neighborhoods west of I-15, west of the railroad tracks, and neighborhoods east of I-15, east of the railroad tracks. What I will say about that is that the richest elementary schools, the wealthiest neighborhoods in Salt Lake City, those East Bench neighborhoods are untouched in this round of closures. There's no distribution of elementary schools by district precinct or board precinct. They don't go by council seat. It wasn't like, hey, we have 7 council seats, we'll pick one from each district. It wasn't, hey, we have 7 board seats, we'll pick one from each district. It seems to make no sense to us geographically in ways that raise some equity issues for, I think, the whole city.
And then to that point too, we've talked about 7th East, there's other major thoroughfares like
absolutely
Foothill that have been drawn as a very impenetrable boundary for kids to cross to school, where, you could argue Foothill has less traffic than 7th East.
It doesn't actually have less traffic. Average daily traffic is lower on Foothill.
Right, but yet we're crossing 7th East every day now. And there's no consideration to further crossings, but Foothill has been drawn as a barrier. And there was an unfortunate death of a student, coming home from an elementary school that wasn't even deemed as a concern, where that happened wasn't even deemed as a safety concern. So how the data was interpreted and applied seems very subjective as far as safety concerns and transportation and equity, just as you both have said.
Okay, so one further question, because again, how this is always couched to us at every single meeting we go to is that this is a west side versus east side situation. And if like these east side schools get shut down, or if the west side, it's just because it's the east versus the west. And I could go on and on, but my question is aren't you facing the same data issues as any other single parent who is potentially living on the west side? Are their concerns should be exactly the same concerns you have?
They should be, and we're all on that same list. There's one list with 27 schools, right? So all 7 of the earmarked schools are on the same list with the same concerns, the same problems. And we're trying to be very careful to say, we think that there are some troubling patterns of the way they identified that string of 4 through Central City. We think that there are similar troubling patterns with how they concentrated 3 closures in kind of the Rose Park, Poplar Grove area, and didn't distribute throughout the rest of the city. So I have many reasons near and dear to my heart for why I would like to see Emerson open. I'm gonna spare you like the heart song on all of that and just try to focus on where we think the troubling problems are district-wide, right? And those lessons are gonna be applicable to Hawthorne families, they're gonna be applicable to Riley and Newman families, they're gonna be applicable to Wasatch and Benyon and Jackson families as well.
Thank you. So we do have a question from the room and we are running late, so go ahead and, go ahead.
So yeah, I just thought I'd speak in support. I mean, generally I understand, I hope I get to speak support of Emerson staying open. And how I frame it would, I mean, UDOT, their value placement is to relieve congestion for roadways, whereas like a city-owned street is for safety. And so that's kind of how I would define it, and I hope to say that much and more. Supported.
And we would just invite folks to, we all have a Salt Lake City board member who represents wherever we live, so you can reach out to them individually. You can also reach out directly to the superintendent's office. That's Dr. Elizabeth Grant, and her office, her executive administrative assistant, is taking comments and adding them to the public record as well.
Who's the board member for here?
So it would be Mohammed Bade, who's District 5 board member for Emerson and Hawthorne, actually. And he lives in the neighborhood. He is the only board member who voted against this list of study closure schools.
So he's already on site.
He absolutely is.
Can he get you the information?
We have tried. Yeah. It needs to come from the district staff.
So so our District 5 rep, Mohammed, he made a plea to the Sugar House Community Council at their last meeting, which is recorded. So we figured instead of having him here, we could just refer folks to that recording to listen to what he has to say. And then we would ask the parents here to give them a voice at our ELPCO meeting. So we're kind of tag teaming. David, who is also a board member, has a question.
Thanks for your presentation. You had mentioned that there's going to be a series of meetings with the school board, throughout the fall. Do you know what the purpose is, what the agenda is? Is it just going to be meetings so they can say they've met, or is there going to be some substantive issues being discussed and perhaps resolved? And the other thing is, what do you need from ELPCO to be supportive of the Emerson School Community Council?
So as to the board meeting schedule, the school board typically meets twice a month. They meet on Tuesdays, it seems. There's usually a public comment period reserved. It's very similar to city council meetings or whatever. So you can always come and you can sign up to comment. If that's not practical, then you can submit a written comment to be added to the public record. And that's been very effective as well. It goes in a binder for all the board members and for staff to review as well. So my hope is that with their board meetings that they haven't already decided what needs to happen here. My hope is that they are truly listening. They have pledged a series of community meetings over the fall in different locations, different dates and times, days of the week and times to accommodate different working schedules for district families who
Are they coming to Emerson?
They're not going to do them at schools. They're going to do them or none of the elementary schools that are slated for closure. They're doing them in what I would call neutral locations throughout the city, but scattering, those community meetings. And I think the support from ELPCO is much appreciated and also much needed. And if there's, it's really voices. It's bringing to concern and saying like, hey, even if I'm not parent of a 10-year-old in Emerson, I'm concerned about this because it's important for our community. It makes sense for our community to be evaluated fairly and transparently by a public body such as the school district. And just kind of continuing to emphasize that messaging with the school district would be really helpful.
Great. Along that same lines, Jeff, you represent Hawthorne. We don't have an SUC, but you are on the PTA. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so Hawthorne is not technically in East Liberty Park neighborhood, so
But its boundaries
well,
are in East Liberty Park.
it's not actually on the outside of it. It's in
No, but
Liberty.
there's
Catchment
the
area.
area that Eats off
Oh, no, no, no.
Part of
Yeah,
it is.
of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah. So we do have a lot of kids
Yeah.
that are in our boundaries that, in their boundaries that are in East Liberty Park. So, thanks for the clarification. That said, should we do the same thing with your Hawthorne parents?
Well,
or-
as I mentioned, my loyalties are divided anyways. I have one child at each.
Okay.
As of this year, my older daughter has been at Hawthorne for several years, and my now middle daughter is at Emerson as well, so.
Okay.
Yeah, I know Hawthorne has not been as vocal as Emerson, just participating in both communities. But I'm sure that the SCC committee would welcome an opportunity to share their concerns, and I know that, but I also know they mirror a lot of what Emerson has said and their concerns with the data, so.
Excellent. Okay, so if this needs to happen, you make it happen for us. Okay, cool. All right, so we have a gentleman on the line. His name is Sam, and he says that he would like to make a comment. Emerson is the second highest elementary school in percent enrollment capacity in the district. With the root reason for closures being reduced enrollment overall, it seems unfair to target a school that reduced the least. See the table here. And he has in our chat entered the fantastic URL, keepemersonopen.info. So, you know, as we near the end of our meeting, just keep that in mind. The SEC is, you know, you can communicate through this this website, and you can get Joey's, who is the chair of their school community councils, direct email from them, and you can dialogue more on this issue outside of ELPCO if you need.
Can I just say one more thing?
Absolutely.
It's also along with the what you mentioned about Emerson pulling in students from across the district, and not only for their special magnet programs, the special education and the extended learning program and the dual language immersion, which are extremely valuable programs, and what my children both participate in the district level. Both schools, both Emerson and Hawthorne, in the last 5 years have been selected as national blue ribbon schools. Emerson just last year and Hawthorne just 4 years ago, which means that they're in the top 1% of all elementary schools in the nation.
Wait, that's the nation.
The nation.
Okay, the nation, just to be clear.
Yet both schools ended up on a board, on a school district level list for recommended closure, and which makes zero sense.
When you close a school, a high quality school, blue ribbon school, you disperse staff, faculty, families, you disperse the community, you disperse the parent teacher organizations, you disperse the community events that really make it a hub.
Yeah.
It just guts a neighborhood.
So I just thought is to look at the judging
Yeah, the criteria.
the criteria for both the national blue ribbon schools and then versus what the school board and district has presented as their criteria, and weight accordingly as far as the quality of the decision making. So.
Okay, great.
Thank you very much. We have a bedtime to attend to.
Okay.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I want to go get a
We're
little
color
bit.
changing pencils.
Oh yeah, can you take these back to your school? Just, I mean, I think you can take all of them.
Do you want to take a few to your class? We'll take.
All right. Yay, yay, okay. So I really appreciate everybody who weighed in on that conversation, both online and in the room. You know, ELPCO's been really having small meetings lately, but this is on Facebook Live, to be clear, so anybody can see it. And then we will be uploading every single one of our meetings that we've had this year up onto our YouTube, now that our wonderful secretary Jeanette has edited them and they are ready for distribution. So we will be sending the copy of this video out to the school board and to all the school board members. So thanks for, I don't know everyone in the room, but thanks for participating. Okay, we really appreciate your input. We're going to have to quickly move on to some Emerson business, or not some Emerson business, some ELPCO business. And we have a few board members in the room. I just want to get a little bit of a straw poll, one of our board members is in the hall, about adding a position to our board that is representative of Liberty Park. We have recently changed our boundaries to include Liberty Park at the request of our neighbors in Liberty Wells and our friends in Central City, because some of the issues in Liberty Park are important enough for 3 community councils to have a say in, and also to try and get our constituents involved in the gem really that is truly Liberty Park and the Tracy Aviary where we meet today. So can I just ask your opinion, Jeff, real quick? What do you think about adding a board member who has been coming to, I've been meeting to regularly, who works at the Chase Home Museum, which is is a city-owned property in Liberty Park.
Yeah, I think representing that area is a great idea.
Okay, so having somebody on the road. Alan, do you have any qualms about discussing adding a
No.
new representative when we expanded our boundaries?
No, I think if you can find somebody who has a special connection to the park, that makes a lot of sense.
And Jeanette?
Yeah, I think sounds great.
Okay, we don't have a full quorum to vote tonight, but I mean, something that if we, at least the people who are in attendance. Was there any other ELPCO business that anybody would like to address at our public meeting? Okay, so I made a mistake on the agenda because I did not realize until today that the Salt Lake Network mayoral debate that we have been invited to participate in is also on September 28th, which is the same date as our meeting. So we are going to need to talk as a board on what we want to do about rescheduling or, doing something during that meeting time. If there's no more questions, I'd like to just thank everybody for joining us, and we're going to say good night. I'm officially closing the online and the Zoom. Have a great evening.